Welcome to the show. My name is Charlton with Big C. This is Charlton and Big C Sports. Coming to you worldwide on the Big C Sports Network, on the #1 network in the United States of America. And Big C Sports has been voted the #1 sports show in the universe, according to Big C. And them good old boys down south, I want to say bienvenidos to all of our listeners in Latin America, also across the pond, in London, England, as well as Paris, France. Of course, you good old boys in Canada. We love you in Africa, the Big C tribe, but there's no one we love more than the good old boys down south in the land of the free and the home of the brave on a beautiful March the 5th, 2020. Grando Deportes, Big C. How's it going for you good old boys down south?
Well, Charlton, we've been enjoying the liquid sunshine down here all week. It's been raining madness. I thought I was still up in the Pacific Northwest when I woke up this morning.
Yeah, it could have been that, or your neighbors left their sprinklers on. It's all fair in love and war. I want to say today's show is sponsored by your Northern California Cadillac dealers, home of the all-new Cadillac Escalade, the standard of the world. And when you go by and test drive yours, tell them Charlton and Big C sent you, as well as a fleet of Cadillac cars. I want to say Big C Sports is powered by Google and Alexa. Just say Google or Alexa, play Big C Sports Podcast. You will hear from our sponsors. You will hear welcome to the show. I will introduce Big C as the Mystic, and he'll do his thing. And I really appreciate the way things are growing with Big C Sports Podcast. You can follow Big C Sports on Xfinity, Comcast TV, Roku TV, Apple TV, Amazon Fire TV, and a lot of smart TVs all over the universe. Really appreciate that. Big C, I know you were saying, did you say it's raining again? Because sometimes I think you're pulling my leg. In California, it's about 70 degrees, but it feels like 80. And as far as I know, we're still in the wintertime, Big C. Your thoughts?
Charlton, everybody has little rivers running down the gutter in front of their sidewalks and in the streets around here, Charlton. It is so much weather that's going on. I was coming home today and I said, I need to wash my car. All I need to do is go out there and squirt some soap on it and it'll take care of itself.
Yeah, sometimes that's the best way to do it. It's also, when you do go out and wash your car, that's when it rains. It never fails that way. If people say pray for rain, no need praying for rain. Just go wash your cars and then the universe will make the rain come down. Really appreciate that. A lot of good things happening in sports. Steph Curry's coming back tonight and he's going to play in San Francisco against the defending NBA champion Toronto Raptors. Looking forward to seeing how that's going to shape up. A lot of good things going on in the world of football. The collective bargaining agreement, that's being sent down the river, so some good old boys can vote on that at a later time, and really looking forward to that, Big C. But I want to get into some thought about this nouveau riche basketball player, the newly rich people. The French call it nouveau riche. But everybody's talking about money. Money doesn't buy championships. It's something about the players and the way the players play. Who's going to carry that baton to be that next new person that carries the NBA on his back? Big C, there's so many people talking about the New Orleans Pelicans. They strolled into Dallas last night, and they faced the Dallas Mavericks and came away with a 123-127 loss. If you had two players, Big C, to start a franchise, who would you take? Is it Super Luke Doncic, Big C, or would it be the Zion, the mountain of a man, Williamson, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, me, Charlton, I would take Luka Doncic. I mean, he's the most complete young player in the game today. When you look at what Doncic does, I mean, last night he set a Mavericks franchise record for triple-doubles in a season.
Yeah.
And yet we still have just about 20 games to play in the season. And you look at the development of this young man since he's been in the NBA. He was Rookie of the Year last year coming into the league.
Yeah.
He was an all-star this year in his second year in the league, and a starter at that. And when you think about him, he's also the third leading scorer in the NBA.
Yeah.
So you talk about a dominant young man, and the thing about Luka Doncic, you know that he can score, you know that he can rebound. He had 17 of those last night.
Yeah.
But he's an assist machine. And when you have a guy that can have the ball in his hands and make all his teammates better, as well as he's a dominant player, that's the player you want to start a franchise with.
That's a player, and I think he's he might be arguably the second greatest European player. I still think the great Dirk Nowitzki, no one can really touch his arcing shot, his eye arcing shot, Big C. There was also Manu Ginobili. He was also doing his thing from back in the day. But this Giannis kid is amazing. However, talking about Luka Doncic and Zion Williamson, is this the NBA's way of trying to make Larry Bird, Magic Johnson Part 2? Big C, your thoughts?
I don't think it's the NBA's way of trying to make Magic Johnson, Larry Bird, because Luka Doncic is head and shoulders above any first and second year player in the NBA. You know, everyone thought it would be him versus Trae Young, and both of those players made All-Star in their second year in the league. Trae Young is a top scorer also. So when you look at that class from last year, it's head and shoulders above the class of this year, players that were drafted in the NBA. I would say the competitiveness would be more between Trae Young and Luka Doncic as far as what both of these players do. Both of them are close to 30-point-a-game scores, and you look at Trae Young, he's double-digit assists also. I mean, right now, Zion Williams is a hype machine. He's a one-dimensional player. He can score baskets inside the paint. And when you look at him scoring, I mean, you can dunk the ball. Yes, that's fine and dandy. It's great for a highlight reel. But when your team has suffered 3 consecutive losses because all you can do is dunk and you're a defensive liability, because he may score 21 points, but he'll also give up 31 points. So his plus-minus is always in the negative.
I know it's never really just one player, and I know Luka Doncic has great basketball skills. I think he's been playing with grown men since he was about 14 over in Europe. So he's really, if you look at his experience on the court against grown men, he's really a veteran player, if you can call it that, NBA style, but they won't give him that accolade. So if you go forward and you have a guy like Luka, and just like you have the Jokic up in Denver, you have those guys, but none of them can really become maybe a Nash or even the great Luke Walton or Bill Walton back in the day, Big C. So do you think he has enough to carry the Dallas Mavericks to an NBA Finals, Big C? Is he that kind of good, Big C? Your thoughts?
I think he's just that good. As long as Kristaps Porzingis can stay healthy and they can add another piece to the Dallas Mavericks, I think you have a great team down there in Texas, Charlton, in the Dallas Mavericks. I think in another year they'll move beyond the Houston Texans down there, well, the Houston Rockets, and become the best team in the state of Texas. You got 3 teams down there: San Antonio, Dallas, and Houston. But I think the nucleus right now of the Dallas Mavericks, when you look at it on paper, you're not looking at a bunch of players who are trying to make a highlight reel, Charlton. You're getting a bunch of players that are trying to mesh together. Porzingis did not play last year, so this is his first year, full year with playing with Doncic. So those guys are only going to get better together. And at 7'3", I mean, it's hard to stop Porzingis. He can become another Nowitzki there in Dallas. They just need one more solid piece. They need to bring in a veteran player, because when you look at the Pelicans, it's a young team all the way across the board. And truly, they have a point guard that cannot shoot. He can throw the ball, Lonzo Ball can, but he cannot shoot. So he becomes a liability to that team. And like I said, Zion Williams is a defensive liability. Everyone that's watching the game on television becomes so enamored with his dunking ability, which anybody can dunk in the NBA, but you got to expand your game beyond the dunks. Daryl Dawkins, when he came into the NBA back in the mid-'70s, Chocolate Thunder, he wowed everybody with his dunks, breaking backboards and all that. And everybody said, wow, you know, nobody's ever going to be able to stop him. But if the dunk is all you have in the NBA career, then you have nothing. You can go back to the Rain Man in Seattle, Shawn Kemp. Same type of style of play. People think that Zion Williams is new. You can go back to a player that used to play at UNLV. He was a number 1 overall pick in the NBA also. His name was Larry Johnson back in the early 90s with the UNLV National Championship team. He came into the NBA. Zion Williams is Larry Johnson 2.0. That's all he is. He's not anything new. We've seen this in the NBA. But Larry Johnson had an outside shot. When you look at Zion Williams, he's probably making 1 to 2 shots a game that are beyond 6 feet. That's it. Everything is at the rim.
Well, I tell you, it's amazing how things are going. I also want to just say I'll pay homage to some good old boys that are putting some things together. Looking forward to launching the real estate listing channel in the spring of 2020. The goal is to get 100 real estate brokers that want to list their properties on television. Really looking forward to that. Also want to give a shout out to one of California's finest insurance agents by the name of Claudia's Insurance. And she can insure your cars, your motorcycles, your commercial properties, your homes, and also she's a notary public. And if you give a shout out to her, Let them know that Big C sent you. I want to get back into what you were saying. Luka Doncic, obviously, he's been around for many, many moons. Big C started as a young man playing with grown men, so he learned a lot of grown men skills. Let me ask you your thoughts. Zion Williamson, he was a prodigy at Duke University, even in high school, and Coach Krzyzewski wanted him also. He's one of the players that would even get President Obama to come down to the college gym and watch him work out because President Obama is also an avid basketball fan, Big C. What does Zion Williamson need to do to improve his game so that someday we're saying Zion Williamson and the NBA champions doesn't have to be New Orleans with Big C? What does he have to do, Big C? Your thoughts?
Charlton, I don't know if he can get much better in the NBA. I mean, I think he's reached his pinnacle, and people say, well, he's just young. Yes, he's 19. Doncic is 20. But when you look at the two at the same age when they were both 19, Luka Doncic's game was much more honed than what Zion Williams is. Zion Williams, ever since he's been in high school, was a highlight reel.
Yeah.
I don't know if he ever really tried to improve his game. So many players stood around and watched him. But when you look at him, he has very poor footwork skills. He doesn't know how to backpedal. He knows how to pivot. But if you watch a game, Charlton, you'll watch offensive players blow by it. These NBA players, they're not going to sit around and wait on Zion Williams to grow.
Yeah.
You just saw the NFL Combine down in Indianapolis.
Oh, yeah.
One of the things they worked on was foot speed.
Footwork,
with all the players, the cone drill, how they could backpedal, accelerate, move laterally. That's the one thing that Zion Williams lacks.
Yeah.
Because if you look at where he's played basketball in high school and in college, he didn't have to go out and defend players one-on-one. He was protected a lot by the zone defense. There's a lot of vulnerabilities in that. And now that he's come to the NBA and these players are lightning quick and they know what his liabilities are, you watch it. They run a lot of pick and rolls on him because he's lazy. He's out there. He's just looking around watching the game.
Yeah.
He doesn't expend his energy on defense. He does it all on offense.
I think that might be a lot of things that a lot of players have learned to play defense last, play offense first. I still think that he's still a young man. He had 1 year of college, and I think you give him another year or two.
I mean, that's half the NBA. 1 year of college. If you look at Zion Williams, and you compare him to LeBron James, when LeBron James came into the NBA, LeBron James played defense. And Zion Williams is not the first kid right out of college 1 year.
Yeah.
There's a lot of kids that came right out of high school and played. Tracy McGrady was a lot more advanced defensively than what Zion Williams is.
Yeah.
Even the late Kobe Bryant was more advanced defensively. Kevin Garnett became an all-defensive player in the league, and that was his thing when he came in. He was a solid defensive player because of his athleticism.
Yeah.
But Zion lacks the foot skills right now to be a top 20 defensive player in the NBA.
And that may be true, but I want to get because I really want to make sure I understand. A lot of NBA analysts consider him up for maybe Rookie of the Year, not because you played more games or fewer games than a Ja Morant, Big C, but because he's an imposing player that's hard to stop. And if he's hard to stop now, imagine when he learns some skills like Luka Doncic against grown men. Zion, this is really his first year playing against grown men. I remember watching Jason Kidd when he came out of St. Joseph High School in Alameda, and he was playing a lot of the summer basketball skills around NBA players, even though he was in high school. So like Luka, by the time he went to Cal Berkeley, and then he got out of there fast, but he took him to the NCAA Tournament Sweet 16, he improved to become an NBA All-Star player. It didn't happen in his first year. It took him a couple of years. You think Zion could have that same? A lot of people think he has that pattern because that's why they're considering him up for Rookie of the Year conversation. Big C, your thoughts?
They consider Zion Williams up for Rookie of the Year conversation based on his dunks. If you look at his overall game, if you sit down and analyze and break down Zion Williams' game like I have, I'm not sitting there. Anybody can dunk a ball.
Yeah.
I was always odd with Sean Kemp dunking a ball and anybody else who has come along and dunked the ball. But show me if you can play defense.
Yeah.
And that's where Zion Williams lacks.
Yeah.
They don't show Zion Williams on his highlight reels playing defense. You don't see him going up blocking shots. You don't see him grabbing rebounds. But when you think about this, Luka Doncic last night had more offensive rebounds than what Zion Williams had defensive rebounds. You talk about his athleticism and his size and his ability. Why isn't he able to grab rebounds? That shows me the lack of defensive ability when you cannot get defensive rebounds. A guy that can move people like he does, he should be double-digit rebounds. But yet he had 7 rebounds in the game last night.
Yeah.
Luka Doncic had 9 offensive rebounds. This is a guy who has basketball savvy and knowledge. And I know saying that Luka played with the European Adult League over there, you think that Zion Williams was going around playing with grammar schoolers the whole time? When he was growing up, he was playing against semi-pro players and pro players while he was in high school.
Yeah. I still think that if we're talking about the same thing in 5 years down the road, then maybe, yeah. But he hasn't even played a complete year, and he's going to improve his game. And I just think he's impossible to stop offensively. Yeah, he's a little bit, what they call wet behind the ears.
Look at the points he gets you outside the paint.
Yeah.
He is not getting you points outside the paint. The guy's made 5 3-pointers in the games that he's played combined. 5 3-point shots. And like I said, last night, he had 7 rebounds in the game. Luka Doncic had 9 offensive rebounds.
Yeah.
Luka Doncic had 17 assists in the game. You have to show me where Zion Williams, and we can always say, well, he's only played so many games.
Yeah.
That's anybody, when you start breaking it down that they only played so many games, look at what he's done overall in those games beyond the offensive points that he scored.
Yeah.
This is all you hear about on the highlight shows. He scored 20 points again. How many rebounds does he have? This is what you're looking at. You have to have a complete game, inside, outside.
Yeah.
And how many points is he scoring outside the paint? That's what makes a difference in an NBA game. We know this is a fast-paced league.
Yeah.
Steph Curry is not trying to get inside the paint. He gets a layup every now and then, but he's trying to knock it down from 3. I'm watching LeBron James knock it down from half court.
Yeah.
That's the difference in an NBA game. What can you do outside the paint? Because the big man has been moved out of the game, and they will run you into the ground if that's the only place you can play.
They're not running him that hard. He's averaging over 25 points every game, and he's still raw.
Like I said, show me how many points he's making outside the paint.
He doesn't have to go outside
that's
the paint.
He can make he can make a dunk.
Yeah.
And that's what they show him, making dunks.
Yeah.
Show me his jump shot. You have to have a well-rounded game in the NBA. One-dimensional doesn't make it anymore.
I still think if you get 25, you could drop 25 points. I don't care if you're doing it from behind the orange stand. If you could get 25 points a game against grown men and you're still
but
a rookie.
Do you understand what a plus-minus is in the NBA?
Yes, but I understand 25 points a game.
You scored 25 points. The
right.
guy you're covering is scoring 31. That means you lose by 6.
Yeah, but it's not one-on-one like playing tennis, Big C. It's a team game. But show me any player in the league that came in as a rookie, didn't even play half the year, and dropping 25 points. That hasn't happened in the league. Not even Kobe Bryant was doing that. And Steph Curry...
Kobe sat on the bench most of his rookie year.
Most of his rookie year. So that's my point. Look at how good Kobe became once he got some tutelage from some grown men. So let's just say wipe the board clear with Zion Williamson this first year. Most guys, they don't really come into their own until their second and third year, even third year. Jordan didn't come into the
And that's what I'm saying about Luka Doncic. You see where he's elevated to in his second year. You see where Trae Young is elevated to in his second year. Both of those guys are in the top 4 scorers in the league, and they were top picks that were traded for each other last year in the draft.
Yeah.
And both of these guys are up close. Well, Trae Young is at 30.9 a game, and Luka Doncic is at 29.7 a game.
Yeah.
So when you look at that, that's the plateau. If we're going to throw out this first year, that Zion has to get to next year. But both of those players also average double-digit assists.
Yeah.
And Luka Doncic is second in the NBA in triple-doubles. So that's the second year of those players. So if we're going to wipe off the first year, that's where Zion Williams has to be next year to be compared to those players.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of guys further down the ladder to success than Zion Williamson. I still want to see him in his second and third season because that's when Steph Curry started to bloom. I want to ask you some things about Steph Curry because he is making his comeback tonight. It's in San Francisco against the defending NBA champions Toronto Raptors. We may not say that again for 30 years, Big C, but tonight's NBA schedule. Denver is at Charlotte. The LA Clippers is really the game of the night. They're down there in Houston against James Harden and Russell Westbrook and them good boys. I want to get your thoughts on that. Philadelphia is at Sacramento. And again, Toronto at the Golden State Warriors. Steph Curry is coming back because he loves the game. Maybe he wants to get some rust out of the shot, whatever it is. And you can only do so much warming up after you come off of an injury. So I'm not expecting a lot out of Curry. but I am expecting maybe some more energy around because it's going to remind people of how things used to be, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, the thing with Steph Curry is he's not coming in trying to make a splash. He's coming in trying to get himself about 20, 22 minutes tonight in that game, Charlton, just to try to get his legs under. You got to understand what happened to the Golden State Warriors this year was the best thing that could happen to them.
Yeah.
Klay Thompson not playing, being injured. Steph Curry getting injured early in the season. Draymond Green has only played 42 games this year. Now, if you go back and you look at LeBron James, played in the NBA Finals 8 consecutive years.
Amazing.
He got hurt last year.
Yeah.
He missed 20 or so games last year with the Lakers. What is LeBron James doing this year? Playing at the MVP caliber. Got the Lakers in first place in the West.
He's healthier. That's
the same scenario that Steve Kerr is looking at with the Golden State Warriors. Yes, he wants to get Steph Curry a little playing time, but he's looking at this as, load management with the team, basically.
Yeah.
Klay Thompson is going to come back, and he's going to be fresh.
Yeah.
His legs are going to be under him. He's going to be able to rise on that jump shot. Steph Curry is going to get in. He played he got hurt in the 4th game this year.
Yeah.
So there's basically 18 games left for the Warriors. And if he plays in all 18 of those games, he's in the 22 games. That's basically a postseason.
Yeah.
So he has an entire season of rest that he's looking at. Draymond Green will basically log 62 games this year.
Yeah.
That's all he's going to do.
Yeah.
So when the Warriors come back next year and they add Giannis to the lineup, look how fresh this team is going to be as far as challenging the NBA.
Yeah.
This is just a game about Steph coming in, getting a little timing back in the latter part of the season. That's all that is.
Did you sneeze, or did you say when they had Giannis to the lineup? Was it a sneeze? It wasn't the Big C pause, but I don't listen to everything. But did you say when they add Giannis to the lineup with the Golden State Warriors? Big C, your thoughts?
Giannis will be a Golden State Warrior next year, Charlton. They made the trade for Andrew Wiggins to match contracts. The thing about the NBA, to trade players, especially in the superstar level, you have to have salary cap room to do that.
Yeah.
The Warriors, with Wiggins, that's the reason why they traded Young to Minnesota to get Wiggins out of there, so they would have a contract that was equal to Giannis's contract. Not only that, the Warriors will most likely have 2 of the top 5 picks in the NBA draft. They're going to get theirs, which most likely will be the number 1 pick. They're also going to get Minnesota's pick, which will be a lottery pick that could be as high as low as 5.
Yeah.
So they can give up 2 of the first 5 picks in the NBA draft, as well as Wiggins, whose money matches Giannis's, and probably a player off the roster. Giannis is not going to stay in Milwaukee if they don't win the championship.
Yeah.
He's not going to L.A. He wants to have his own party to play in.
Yeah.
And he knows what happened when Kevin Durant came to Golden State with that arsenal that they had.
Yeah.
And you think he doesn't want to be a part of it? He comes to California and he gets to shine.
Well, I've been saying that he's not going to end his career in Milwaukee. He's going to follow what Kareem did. He will most likely come to the West Coast. The New York Knicks, as long as Dolan's around, they blew their chances at everything. But let me ask you a question. You were saying the other day, Mark Jackson, you were asking about African-American coaches on the West Coast in the NBA. The Pac-12 football has 5, even though 1 went up to Michigan State. So there's still 5 in the 2020 calendar year. Now they have Dorrell there. But when you look at basketball coaching, the great Doc Rivers, they're down in Texas tonight. And I hope they bring their own Gatorade Big C, because you know how Texas Justice is. Is Steve Kerr still what they call a great basketball mind? They have the worst record in the NBA. They let go of Mark Jackson, who got them to a playoff because they said he didn't have what it takes to get them over the hump. It was never about Mark Jackson. It's about Steph Curry, Klay Thompson, a guy by the name of Draymond Green, and some other guys that came into the fold. There's no heat on how poorly Coach Kerr is coaching, because they have the worst record. Could you imagine if Mark Jackson he got fired when they made the playoffs? I'm not saying fire Steve Kerr, but I'm saying he got so much credibility coming to him because he had some of the best players in the basketball universe. But without those great African-American players, is Steve Kerr still an NBA basketball wizard? Big C, your thoughts?
Yes, he is. You have to understand, this is strategical what the Golden State Warriors are doing this year.
Yeah.
And if you look at the moves that they made, when they went out and sign Young right off the back in the offseason. Like, people like, wow, they're going to have Young, they're going to have Curry, they're going to have, Thompson, all these three shooters. They brought in Young. That was a strategic move, just to have him as trade bait.
Yeah.
They brought him in to make that move with Minnesota. That was a two-team deal right off the back when that move was made for Young.
Yeah.
They knew that they weren't going to keep him, that they were going to move him. They moved him to Minnesota. That's part of the coaching tactic. Steve Kerr is understanding. He learned under that tree there in Chicago under Phil Jackson.
Yeah.
The moving pieces that you needed.
And Coach Pop.
And this is not about a win-loss record, because Golden State had not, when they lost Klay Thompson, then they lost Steph Curry,
Yeah.
right off the back they said, we don't have anything.
Right.
Steph Curry was the only chance of making the playoffs.
Yeah.
The minute they lost him, they said, this season is a wash.
Yeah.
There was no pressure on Kerr. The only pressure was on him was not to win. That was the pressure put on him, not to win, so they would be in that lottery opportunity.
Big C, I'm inclined to believe you, because the Golden State Warriors, they've had 12 blowout losses by at least 20 points. That's 2-0, 20 points. It's hard to lose by 20 points, even if you're trying, and especially if you're a team that's played in 5 of the last 5 NBA Finals. But I do believe in the prop betting. I believe in shenanigans, and if the lower you finish, the more you can move up and get some kind of draft. But I do believe in what you're saying. They are trying to tank the season, but I thought tanking was against sportsmanship. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, no, I mean, everybody understood, because the Golden State Warriors had an excuse.
Yeah.
They had none of their star players. And like I said, Draymond Green has only played in 42 games this year. Think about it, 42 games. He's been the one healthy guy. They haven't had a consistent lineup in Golden State all year long. What Steve Kerr was doing was building a bench with this team that he has right now.
Yeah.
You have to have role players, and so they needed to find out which 5 players deserve to be on that team next year in critical backup roles, because they're going to have a set lineup. But you need to develop some players, and this was that year of developing. You didn't have to have D-League players coming in. You just had NBA players on the floor. You take your lumps at times.
Yeah.
You look at what the Los Angeles Lakers did last year. Did anybody say that the Lakers were tanking after LeBron got hurt? They were in second place in the West, I believe, when he got hurt.
Yeah.
But all of a sudden, they end up almost last in the West.
Yeah.
No one said that they were tanking. But what they were doing was building up a lineup to see who they were going to keep and who they were going to get rid of, and that's what they did.
Yeah.
Golden State is doing the same thing this year, running that same tactic. And like I said, you run 5 consecutive years into the NBA Finals.
Yeah.
Your legs are tired.
Yeah.
The starters needed a rest. They even rested Draymond Green here during the season. No one said that was load management, but he's only played 42 of 63 games.
Yeah.
So he's missed 21 games. That's load management on Draymond Green.
Yeah.
And he also got kicked out of a few games. So
Yeah.
this was a tactical move by the organization and Steve Kerr.
Yeah, it may have also been a tactical move that you got that $2+ billion Chase Center, and so much money was poured on Golden State to three-peat again, like the Chicago Bulls did back in the day. The Lakers have had three-peats also. And so money swings different ways. I'm just saying it's all fair.
But you got to look at the Boston Celtics when you win 7 in a row. So 3 peats mean nothing.
Well, they had some other kind of pressure, Big C, to pay them good old boys back in the Beantown, as they call it. I really want to ask you this question before we get to the Big C pause. If Giannis is going to come to Golden State next year, especially if, I think even if Milwaukee wins the championship, he's going to be out of there, because you're giving them everything you can give them. And they'll probably burn his jerseys away. Cleveland burned LeBron James' jersey too. If he comes next year, LeBron James' chance of that window of winning a championship, it gets more difficult to even get out of the West, Big C, along with what the Clippers are doing. Your thoughts?
Well, I mean, nobody's guaranteed the West right now. I mean, Houston on a good night, a good fortnight, can beat any team in the West. I mean, when you come down to the playoffs and everybody's saying, well, they're playing small ball, you got to play basketball and win 4 games in the playoffs. And every team that you play against in the playoffs is a championship caliber team.
Yeah.
Where you're playing teams right now as the season closes out that are not even going to make the playoffs, or are they trying that hard? So when you get into the playoffs and you're playing the Houston Rockets, which is the last team you want to play, and they run and gun you for 48 minutes, that's going to put a lot of pressure on your big men. People can always talk about big men in basketball, But when you have to run and you're on that 100th game of the season, the legs get a little bit heavy. And when you're putting guards out there running against them, you might out-rebound them, but you better hopefully that they're not knocking down 58% of their shots from the floor.
It was like the late, great Richard Pryor was telling a skit about some farmer that had some bulls, and the young bull always wanted to run down the hill and get his groove on with the younger cows, Big C. But the older bulls, they said, let's just take our time, walk down there, and enjoy even more. Big C will take the Big C timeout, also known as the Big C pause. We'll be back in just a moment. All right, we are back from the Big C timeout, also known as the Big C pause. You can follow Big C Sports 24 hours a day, 7 days a week on the #1 podcast network in the universe, iHeartRadio Podcast. You can follow Big C Sports on Apple Podcasts. You can follow Big C Sports on Google Podcasts. You can follow Big C Sports on Speaker.com and the apps that I really love. And give it a try. Say Google or Alexa, play Big C Sports Podcast. You will hear from our sponsors. You will hear welcome to the show. I will introduce Big C as the Mystic, and he will do his thing, and I really appreciate the way things are going with Big C Sports. You can follow Big C Sports on Xfinity, Comcast TV, Roku TV, Amazon Fire TV, a lot of smart TVs all over the universe. Really appreciate that. Also launching a real estate listing channel in the spring of 2020. The goal is to get 100 brokers to list their properties on TV. Really looking forward to making that happen. Big C, I know, and they say when you were in Texas, you know, they love black people in Texas when it's time to vote. They were saying how many people that Biden wrapped up in Texas, people that never even met him. But I think it was like saying thank you for supporting President Obama back in the day, etc. Just my opinion. But the Clippers now, they're down in Houston. I know Steve Ballmer has more money than a lot of people in the universe, supposedly $40 billion. I don't know who counted the money. And they're talking about getting their own arena in Los Angeles as opposed to being Staples, where they are second-tier Staples Center. Well, now they're down in Texas. And you know Texas justice is not always fair. Sometimes you don't travel when you take 19 steps. Sometimes it's not a foul when you poke somebody in the eyeball, Big C. Will the Clippers come out of Houston without Band-Aids, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, I mean, this is an interesting, process that's going to be going down in Houston tonight, Charlton. And so we know that the Clippers have a couple of great wingmen in Harden and in George.
Yeah.
But we also know that the Rockets have two great guards.
Yeah.
How will they defend them, Charlton? We know that Kawhi Leonard can knock it down as well as George, but when you get James Harden and he's hot, and you get Russell Westbrook penetrating, Charlton, you're going to have to run tonight. And so you're going to take the big men out of the game for the Clippers. This is a prelude to what's going to go on in the playoffs.
Yeah.
And the Clippers have to hope that they can win tonight, because if they don't, then the Rockets are going to overtake them for third place in the West.
Yeah.
And that's not a place they want to be in.
Yeah, especially when you have a young team that can run up and down the court. And whether you get rebounds or not, when you're running people till their tongues come out, like the smart cow, the old cows that walk down the hill, that young cow, he's running down the hill. And when you're running down that hill, you're going to get to the ball faster. It's just a matter of what they do with it. I'm looking forward to really seeing that game. I think it's definitely NBA basketball preview of a playoff game, and I hope that we'll see those teams in this series also. I want to ask you a lot of questions about college basketball because I really love it. But before we do that, I want to just ask your thoughts. The NFL players, they were sent a 436-page proposal for the new collective bargaining agreement, and they have up until the 12th of March to vote on it. So who in the world's going to count 436 pages when they can Google things? Your thoughts?
Well, I mean, you think about that. Not one damn owner read 436 pages, okay?
Nope.
They don't do that.
Right.
Nobody reads 430. You haven't done that since you were in
They
college.
Google it, yeah.
To sit down in a week and say, okay, I got to go through 436 legal pages, not just pages. You know, we're not reading Gone with the Wind, because it might as well be toss it up in the air and let it be gone with the wind.
Yeah.
But nobody's going to do that. As a player, and especially a young player, you don't have time for that.
No.
You can't work out and get ready for the season reading that. So do you go to your player rep and say, okay, give me the synopsis of all of this? Do you go to your agent and say, hey, this is what I pay your butt for, okay? Tell me what it's all about. What does it mean?
Right.
Give me the X's and O's of it.
Yeah.
You know, do you go to an older player that's playing the same position as you? Say, how does this favor us all in this?
Yeah.
But, I mean, this is part of what goes on in the NFL, why it's not crystal clear to players and why you have these long, drawn-out negotiations.
Yeah.
So you tell me during this time that the negotiations were going on, you had somebody sitting there taking notes, and that notes came up to 436 pages of what this should all be.
Yeah.
I mean, this is a farce, and like I said, they play this out in the media
Right.
to make everybody think that, okay, everybody has a full grasp of what's going on here.
Yeah.
This is why players don't always understand. This is legal jargon that's in this document. This is why you need your agent
Yep.
or some lawyers to sit you all down at the same time and explain it to you.
Yeah.
Because no one goes in and reads a law book, and that's what this breaks down to with all the ins and outs. This is a law document that's being put forth.
Yeah.
And so these players are going to sign it, but when they sign it, it's just like a bill in Congress. There's some pork bellies in there. There's stuff that's hidden that you don't understand.
Yeah.
And this is why you need to get your agent to explain it to you fully.
Yeah.
You pay him to represent you, pay him to read it to you.
Yeah, they say only a fool would represent himself in court, so they're going to give it to the players and say, you guys read this, and that's what representation is for. But maybe some guys will read it, but most guys probably won't. That's a lot to go through when you got to work out and do a lot of other things.
There's not two players, Charlton, going to read 436 pages. I
Yeah.
mean, we're talking about reading a novel.
Right.
An extensive novel with law jargon in there.
Yeah.
So unless you have a law degree
Yep.
in trying to read this, you're not going to understand it because
Yeah.
lawyers put it together.
Yeah.
Not a secretary. Lawyers put this together.
Yeah. Yeah, a lot of lawyers will start out and say, isn't it true that you did go in there and take all the cows from your neighbor's yard? And I'm like, no, I didn't. And they say, yeah, but isn't it true that you did it? It's like, no, but I did take some cows. Well, so you lied. I mean, they have ways of twisting words. Big C is all fair in love and war. Get the lawyers to read that stuff. Big C and the final race, when you think about it, the race for the Final Four, this might be unlike any Final Four we've seen this year because of health concerns. We're not trying to put our head in the sand. I know we talked about a lot of that yesterday. But the race for the Final Four, it really has begun, with college conference championships underway. And I know we did a lot of talk on the coronavirus yesterday. I know there was bird flu many moons ago. There was 2K. There was so many, 2 decades ago. There's always something, either a pandemic or
Well,
something.
think about this, Charlton,
Yeah.
as everybody has talked about the coronavirus
Yeah.
worldwide, and we have our administration said that the coronavirus is not a threat
Yeah.
to the United States. And I'm not being a sycophant or anything, but when you look at this, and everybody said, well, we only have so many cases in the U.S., 137 documented cases
Yeah.
in the U.S., and I believe at least a half a dozen deaths, unfortunately. You realize in that 137 documented cases that the U.S. has only tested 600 people?
Wow.
Now, you think about that percentage. 22% of the people that the United States have tested for the coronavirus have come up positive.
Yeah.
That's the highest percentage in the world. That's higher than China. That's higher than Italy. We have a higher percentage rate of people being tested than any other country in the world. This is why our administration does not want people tested for coronavirus.
Yeah.
Because we're in the middle of a political race, and he doesn't want to politicize it. He doesn't want people saying, well, you're not doing enough.
Yeah.
So he has refused to let the masses be tested in the United States. As a matter of fact, tomorrow was supposed to be at least 1 million testing kits made available to the public.
Yeah.
The administration has pulled those back, said no, they're not going to be available.
Yeah.
Because he doesn't want to make political suicide in getting people tested and not doing enough to fight this coronavirus.
Well, he did say it was a Democratic ploy to help him lose the presidency, and maybe he will lose it. Who knows? But as people start looking at science compared to buffoonery, you got to choose if you
Well,
believe
what
in
they
science
should
or
do,
not.
Charlton, is test his followers,
Yeah.
test his base. That's what they need to do. They need to go to where his base is and say, we want to test all of you for coronavirus.
Yeah.
And if they were to come up positive, they said, no, it's fake news.
It's
That's
fake
what he would say.
news. Yeah.
But our administration is hurting America over political agenda
Yeah.
in not letting people be tested for the coronavirus.
Yeah, well, it's all fair and love and war. They just got to read and read and read as much as possible. So Big C, March Madness, bracketology, when you think about the bracketology of it, Selection Sunday is actually going to be on March 5th, just about 10 days away. And you have first and second rounds that are going to be March 19th through the 21st, and that's going to be in Albany, in St. Louis, also Spokane, Washington, and then Tampa. And those around those regions.
Think about the one in Spokane, Charlton.
Yeah.
Because, we hear about the epidemic, the breakouts that are there in Seattle, and they've had at least a half a dozen deaths, unfortunately, in Seattle. That's in that same region up in the Pacific Northwest. And so, we saw where Chicago State and a school out of Kansas City, we're not going to go to the Big West tournament that's going to the PCA tournament that's up there in Seattle where they're holding it this week in the West Coast Athletic Conference.
Yep.
So how would that affect that area? You think about it, the game being played up there in Spokane, well, you're going to have at least 4 teams up there.
Yeah.
And if this continues to spread up in Washington State, how will the NCAA look at that?
Yeah, they may start following what Italy did. A lot of people think that Italy wine is better than California wine, not necessarily at all. But they may start following some of the medical protocol that's coming out of the European country, Big C. Also, you think about first round and then second rounds, that's going to be March 20th to the 22nd. We're looking at Cleveland, Ohio, Greensboro, North Carolina, Omaha, Nebraska, and then Sacramento, California. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Cleveland, they must have bid for that before LeBron James left Charlton a few years ago. But, that's going to be some interesting breakdowns. As we move through March Madness, I believe we start out with about 65 teams, and then we reduce it down with that one-game playoff to get in there, Charlton. But, as we move through bracketology and you look at how the NCAA is broken down, it's not always in the biggest markets in the United States where they play these regional games.
Yeah, they'll play it wherever they can get somebody to give them a nice deal on a hotel, Big C. We know it's gonna be played no matter what the coronavirus thoughts are, and if people are healthy or not. It's just a lot of money on the line. They may play it to some emptier stadiums and arenas, but it's gonna happen. Midwest Regional, March 26th through 28th. That's in Indianapolis, Indiana, which is really known as Hoosier State, one of the most, I guess, celebrated states for high school basketball. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, the Indiana has always been a great following for basketball. It's one of the hearts of basketball. You think about it on the high school and college level, and you think about all of the great players and institutions that have been involved in that state. But, there it's going to be played at the Lucas Oil Stadium, where they're going to host it at. And you think about the Hoosier Dome that they played there, Charlton. They had some great, memorable championships played there back in the day.
Yeah, and I'm sure they'll look forward to that. Hopefully they'll get on top of this medical thing. But, science versus media, I trust science, Big C. West Regional, March 26th through 28th in beautiful downtown Los Angeles, California. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, the Staples Center will be hosting Charlton down there. I mean, it's always a great haven for basketball, and to bring to the center of California down there in Los Angeles, college basketball at its highest. I know the Pac-12 hasn't done well. It would be nice to see a Pac-12 team be able to be in that part of the tournament.
UCLA is looking pretty strong the way things have closed up down the stretch, Big C. Also, the South Regional, March 27th through 29th. That's in H-Town, Houston. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Houston, and you're talking about a big game going on in Houston tonight with the Rockets and the Clippers. But, Houston knows how to put on a party. They do things big in Texas. You got the stadium down there, the big, I'm trying to remember the name of the new Dome Stadium, where they'll be hosting that championship series out there.
Yeah, I think it's RG3.
Reliance Stadium.
Oh, okay, Reliance Stadium. There's a lot of stadiums down in Texas, Big C. We also go to East Regional. Man, March 27th to 29th. They still call New York the Mecca of basketball, maybe for playground basketball, but not for teams that play on the wood floor. But in New York, it's still a great place to watch any type of event. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, whether you have that in the Barclays Center or Madison Square Garden, Charlton, it seems like basketball on the East Coast started in New York. You think about all the great playground legends that they've had there in that state, Charlton, and all the great superstars that have grown up there and gone on to college elsewhere. But when you do things in New York, Charlton, you do things big.
Yeah, you do things big, especially when you say, Spike Lee, I told you got to come through the back door. I mean, it's funny how they try to get rid of a guy. I mean, sometimes if you got good patrons that come to your restaurant, don't you kind of give them the extra treatment? You give them a little bit extra you tip off that mason jar that they bring to the back door a little bit higher. You might throw them an extra piece of rib without giving them any type of headache, Big C. What's up with people who are trying to run away good business, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, I mean, when you look at the owner there, Charlton, he's taken so much criticism over the past couple of years. But I go back to Adam Silver, and I go back to what he did to the guy that used to own the Clippers out there, Charlton, when he told the guy that he could no longer be a part of the league.
That was Sterling down in L.A.
When you think about the partnership between all 30 owners in the NBA, and you would think that they would all be in for the same thing, the good of each other, the good of the industry.
Yeah.
And, this is a time that Silver needs to step in, and as well as the other 29 owners, and they take a vote on what's good for the league.
Yeah.
If it was not for revenue sharing in the NBA, Dolan would be gone long time ago.
Yeah.
But because you have revenue sharing in the NBA, it's very difficult for them to get rid of him because he's not costing the league any money.
Yeah.
Does the league want New York to be a viable entity?
Of course.
I think that's a yes and no question, because is the league any worse off without New York being viable?
I think it can always be better. I mean, you still want that media market. It's always better when you have good teams.
But you state yourself a lot that the media is misrepresented because people are streaming.
Yeah.
And if they're streaming and they don't have a Nielsen box, what does it mean?
Well, I think for let's just pull up cities in the Gores. Fans can love wherever they live, Big C. If you have a chance to take some NBA players or some NFL players or Major League Baseball players and say, do you want to spend the whole week in Oklahoma City or, let's say, Memphis, Tennessee, or would you rather spend it in New York City or Los Angeles? I think that those men would choose, they say, hey, let's all go to Miami. But New York and LA would rank high in San Francisco. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, but, it's at a place nowadays with NBA players. They might live in a city during the season, but they live there all off season. And if you look at the New York Knicks, Charlton, those players are not in New York year-round because you're limited in your ability to do things in the city of New York.
Yeah.
New York is a great place to visit. It's not the greatest place to live. It's one of the greatest cities in the world. But when you look at these young guys, they want to be out where they can have their freedom and not boxed in.
Yeah, and I forewarned everybody when I was in New York. I bought this gold chain from this guy. He opened up his trench coat, and I thought, that's a nice-looking chain. I got it for $25, Big C, and I had my neck had turned green like a day or two later, Big C. I didn't think it was real, but I had to take that chance, Big C. It took about 3 days to get my neck to turn from being green, if that makes any sense. Big C, the Final Four is also in another great city down south, and the mecca for African-American business, I would say, Atlanta, Georgia, from April 4th through April 6th, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, when you look at the events that the city of Atlanta has hosted, Charlton, in the past 2 years, they host the SEC championship game in football every year. They hosted a national championship game just 3 years ago. They hosted a Super Bowl 2 years ago. And now you're talking about hosting the Final Four. If you're an athlete and you're planning on being in a championship at some level, you may have to come to the city of Atlanta.
And it's amazing that Atlanta's primarily had many African-American mayors. They have a nice airport. I think the busiest airport in the world as far as international flights in Jackson Hart Film. It's just a great place. I have a TV show that is on. Tyler Perry produces it. I think it's called, Sisters. And they have these women that do it. One name is Kim. I think she reached out to me on an Instagram. But I love watching that show, Big C, and it's also out of the beautiful city of Atlanta. And didn't you say Tyler Perry built a facility, used to be on an army base? I think $1 billion he put into it for making movies. Big C, your thoughts?
Yeah, he bought an army base down there in the city of Atlanta, Charlton. Matter of fact, they hosted the Miss Universe pageant out there this last year, Charlton, where Steve Harvey hosted that. But it's where Tyler Perry Studios are. And you think about Tyler Perry, this is a young man that was homeless at one point a couple decades ago. And he's become one of the largest movie moguls in America.
Yeah, he's a very, very intelligent man. And as mainstream would say, if he were an athlete, he has good movie intelligence, Big C. He has a good movie IQ. The man just very intelligent. Wish him nothing but the best. I want to just take the time in the final 10 minutes of Big C Sports today on this beautiful March the 5th and just get your thoughts on some of the top 10 college basketball programs of all time. I want to go back to that 1983-1984 season. It was the Georgetown Hoyas. The Hoyas mostly back then, they had the 7-footer, the great Patrick Ewing. Patrick Ewing, not only would he drop a lot of baskets, but he dripped and sweated on everybody. They were off of a 34-3 season and a convincing 84-75 victory over the great Hakeem the Dream Olajuwon for the Houston, and they won the national championship. That was a great team, the Georgetown Hoyas, based on the great coach John Thompson. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, they had a good team. I mean, when you look at the era that they played in, Houston never lived up to their billing as far as once they got into the tournament. I mean, they were one of the most prolific regular season teams in college basketball history. You know, you have a team named Five Slamma Jamma.
Yeah.
But as you think about how good the Hoyas were, they only won one championship with that great unit of talent that they had there, Charlton. They didn't fulfill all their expectations either.
Yeah, they didn't. They really didn't. I tell you, the team that really got me glued to the set every time I had the chance, 1989-1990, the UNLV Running Rebels by the great Jerry Tarkanian was always chewing on his towel. I know he later went on to coach at Fresno State and prior to that, Long Beach State. It was Jerry Tarkanian's 1991 UNLV squad, probably the better team, but the Running Rebels were the team to beat that season. Their only loss by Duke in the Final Four, and that's because I think they were just playing like a lot of young men do. They were trying to run down the hill to get the cow as opposed to walking down to get the cow. The great Richard Pryor. Big for your thoughts.
Well, when I think about Jerry Tarkanian as a coach, I think the best team that Jerry Tarkanian ever had as a coach was his 1974 Long Beach State team. I know he had some great teams at UNLV. He won a national championship there, but at the time when he was coaching at Long Beach State, that when the NCAA tournament only had 16 teams. And ironically, in the first round every year, he always had to face UCLA because they didn't move teams across the country.
Yeah.
The UCLA team that he lost to in that 74-75 season went on to win the national championship, but I think that was his best team, not the UNLV team, even though they did win the championship at UNLV.
Yeah, they really did win that championship. They were more like men. They were the basketball mecca that it was not just because of the great basketball program. It was around everything that happens when people go down to Las Vegas and they say what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. A lot of things didn't stay in Vegas, Big C, but I know they had a great time down there. It's a shame that they were not old enough to go to the clubs. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, I mean, you don't go to Vegas to go to the clubs. You go there to get an education.
Yeah, exactly, Big C. We all know that's true. 1991, 1992, the Duke Blue Devils, coached by Coach Krzyzewski. They had a lot of guys. They really wanted to build up. Christian Laettner was never as good in the NBA as he was built up to be at Duke. The great Grant Hill and also Bobby Hurley, 1992 Duke Blue Devils. They certainly had the talent, and they combined to win quite with a lot of magic, too. I remember that time where that 75-foot pass was thrown to Laettner. He turned around and shot the ball through the hoop, and they beat Kentucky 104-103. Big C, your thoughts?
And I think Kentucky was the best team in the NCAA that year, even though Duke went on to beat them in that epic battle, Charlton, when Laettner hit the turnaround shot at the free throw line. But that Kentucky team was outstanding. But Coach Krzyzewski has won 5 titles since he's been at Duke. I mean, one of the most phenomenal coaches in college basketball history. And that team had a great team of All-Americans and potential and future pro stars.
Yeah, they had everything. And, of course, he's an Olympic champion also. 1981, 1982, North Carolina Tar Heels. Think about this lineup. The great Sam Perkins, the great James Worthy, the great Michael Jordan. Although Jordan, he was only a freshman, that trio was unlike any other. Perkins went on to have a terrific NBA career. Worthy and Magic, and Jordan. Worthy had his thing going out with Magic down in the Lakers and Lake Show. And then Jordan became part of the NBA's greatest players of all time. With Jordan, maybe even the top of the mountain. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, in college, he was just an average player in college, Charlton. He wasn't even the star of that team.
17 points a game.
That was a team that the stars on that team was Worthy and Perkins. He was most memorable for hitting the game-winning shot against Georgetown in a game where Georgetown had dominated. And I know going into that game, John Thompson told Patrick Ewing anything that came towards the rim just swatted down, whether it was goaltending or not.
Yep.
And he intimidated North Carolina for most of that game.
He
this was one of those games with Dean Smith slowed it down, and that's one of the things I always hated about college basketball is that you slow the game down and you take the run-and-gun team out of it.
You take them out of it. 1975, 1976, the great Indiana Hoosiers led by head coach throwing chairs at people, yelling at people, the great Bobby Knight. The 1976 Indiana Hoosiers, they silenced all doubters, Big C. They put together a perfect 32-0 season. The last time that was ever done, they had 3 All-Americans, Scott May, Kent Benson, and the great Quinn Buckner, Big C. That was a very good basketball team. Your thoughts?
It was beyond a very good basketball team, as you spoke about it itself, 32-0, going through undefeated on a season. Not only that, Charlton, you go undefeated, but you had 4 number 1 draft picks on that team that came out that year off of that team. Wilkerson, Buckner, May, and Benson.
Yeah.
All of those players were number 1 draft picks in the NBA. That lets you know how great Bobby Knight's team was in Indiana. And that team was put together before social media.
Yeah.
So a lot of people around the country will never know how good that team was because they didn't play on television every week as you see the games now in college basketball. They came on a couple times a year, but when it came down to March Madness, they went mad and went through the field, Charles.
They went mad and went through the field. Maybe this year's UCLA Fight Bruins can be inspired. That 1971-1972 UCLA Bruins, the Bruins led by the great Bill Walton, Henry Bibby, Bixie, they were 30-0 and won by an average margin of 32 points a game back in the day. Probably the best team ever, Bixie. Your thoughts?
Well, it's hard to say that they're the best team ever. That Indiana team, Charlton, would have been hard-pressed not to be the best team ever at 32-0.
Yeah.
The team with Bill Walton had the marvelous win streak of 88 consecutive games that were broken by Notre Dame. But when I look at that Indiana team, I would have loved to see Indiana play against them in that era, Charlton, because I think Benson would have neutralized Walton. But they had, like I said, 3 other first-round draft picks beyond Benson on that team. UCLA didn't have that.
I want to go out one more time to the West Coast, Big C, 1955-1956 season. The great San Francisco Dons up on the hill. They won the national title for the 2nd year in a row, and they made history. Think about this. The 55 team, because of the great Bill Russell and also Casey Jones, they just a year older. At 6'10", Russell led a suffocating San Francisco Dons defense. They went 29-0 and pushed their win streak to 55 games. That arguably is the best team ever, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, it's going to be considered one of the best team ever. When you look at the era that the Dons played in, Charlton, you didn't travel all across the country to play everybody. You had a lot of West Coast-centric teams that you played, but there's no doubting what Bill Russell did. The guy did not lose for 2 years in college. He went on to win an Olympic gold medal, and after he left there, he went on to win 7 consecutive NBA titles.
Yeah.
But that Dons team at that time when Bill Russell there was the benchmark of the West Coast prior to UCLA.
They really were. I want to finish up 2 more teams, 1995, 1996, Kentucky Wildcats. You think about this team. You think about this. You point to the fact they were 34-2. They rolled off 27 straight wins and ran circles around everybody in the NCAA tournament. They won 6 games by an average of 21 points, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, it comes to the competition that you're playing against at that time. And when you see those 6 games, a lot of those games, non-conference teams, are teams without winning records. I mean, an outstanding job that has always been done. Rick Pitino was a tremendous coach, as well as your buddy Calipari down there at Kentucky.
Yeah.
Tubby Smith won a championship down there also. So this is one of the lineages of Kentucky. Joe B. Hall, Tubby Smith, Rick Pitino, John Calipari. You bring in coaches that know how to win championships.
Yeah, and we'll close out on the team that might be the best ever that got knocked off because somebody poked cream in his eye, the 1967-1968 UCLA Bruins. And you think about it, they went 29-1, and their only loss came at the hands of Houston, a team that they had already beaten up on. But so when you poke cream in the eye, that's why he started wearing goggles, Big C. You don't have to be undefeated to be the best team ever. Just poke somebody in the eyeball, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, Kareem had gotten hit in the eye, and he wasn't even supposed to play in the regular season game that they lost to the Houston, the Houston Rockets, the Houston Cougars.
Yeah.
And at that time, it was a game of the century. They played the game down in the Houston Astrodome, and they had the largest crowd in college basketball history to that date. 58,000 people who played in the Houston Astros. And the game was actually broadcast in prime time on ABC Wide World of Sports. They made a special broadcast for this game of the century. And Kareem, Elvin Hayes dominated Kareem that night, Lou Alcindor at that time. But they came back together, Charlton, and played for the championship. And it was a no-doubter that night where Lou Alcindor went out and scored 46 points against Elvin Hayes and was unstoppable. And realistically, he's the most dominant college basketball player of all time. Many people don't realize he was not allowed to play as a freshman at UCLA. They had their own, the freshmen did not play with the upperclassmen at that time. You had a freshman schedule. But UCLA had just won the championship right prior to Lou Alcindor entering UCLA. They went out, the freshman team, and beat the national championship team by 27 points in a scrimmage. And who was the best team in the country? Was it UCLA's freshman or UCLA's national championship team?
We know the answer to that. You can follow Big C Sports 24 hours a day, 7 days a week on the #1 podcast network in the universe, iHeartRadio Podcast. You can follow Big C Sports on Apple Podcasts. You can follow Big C Sports on Google Podcasts. You can follow Big C Sports on 2 apps that I love called Google and Alexa. Just say Google or Alexa, play Big C Sports Podcast. You will hear from our sponsors. You will hear Welcome to the Show. I will introduce Big C as the Mystic, and he'll do his thing, and I really appreciate the way things are going with Big C Sports. You can follow Big C Sports on Xfinity, Comcast TV, Roku TV, Amazon Fire TV, and a lot of smart TVs all over the universe. Really appreciate that. Launching a real estate listing channel in the spring of 2020, and really looking forward to that. Big C, back in the day, there was a man by the name of Drew Boudini Brown. He was known as Muhammad Ali's right-hand man, and he would always tell Ali, with all you got to use, how can you lose? Rumble, young man, rumble. Big C, what are you looking forward to in this sports universe?
Well, everybody right now is starting to put air into the bubble as we get ready to start these conference championship games in college basketball. And we're going to see who's going to be the bubble busters as this week goes on.
Well, I don't want my bubble bust. I want to take the time and blow it up, and you can blow it up too every Monday through Friday at 5 and 6 p.m. worldwide when you follow Big C Sports on the Big C Sports Network, on the #1 network in the United States of America. And Big C Sports has been voted the #1 sports show in the universe, according to Big C and them good old boys down south. As we always tell you, that's never, ever an excuse for domestic violence. If you know any man or woman going through that garbage, please pick up the phone and call 911, because no man or woman should ever have to deal with that garbage on their own. And as we always tell you on every Big C Sports show, we thank you, we appreciate you, and we hope that you have a super fantastic day.